Greetings and salutations, I'm Dexter from Researcher Stripped, and in this episode we will be covering research conducted by Miller et al. Back in 2007 and published in the same year in the journal Evolution and Human Behavior. This research linked how much dancers made in tips and their menstrual cycle. It is a bit old, but it has been cited over 160 times in other research. Before we get into their paper entitled Ovulatory Cycle Effects on Tip Earnings by Lap Dancers, Economic Evidence for Human Estrus, let's briefly go into the menstrual cycle. It is generally divided into 4 phases: the menstrual, the follicular, the ovulatory, and the luteal phase. Each phase has distinct hormone and physical changes which are mostly hidden in humans except for the first phase. The menstrual phase is measured from the time the bleeding starts to the time the bleeding ends, and usually lasts between 3 to 5 days on average. Bellatrix has made a video about dancing while on your period, which should be published in a couple days. Think of this phase as your body's reproductive system spring cleaning. It is getting rid of the old stuff and preparing for your body's next attempt at getting pregnant. The follicular phase is when your uterus is preparing itself for the next egg implantation attempt. As this phase progresses, the chance for pregnancy increases due to a variety of reasons. One is that sperm can last 3 to 5 days inside a female's reproductive system. So just think of all those squiggly cells squiggling around inside of you after unprotected sex for several days. The ovulation phase, or also being called in estrus, is when you're most fertile. It is when the egg is released and it makes its way down the female reproductive system, hoping to meet a sperm on its way so it can get implanted inside the uterus. Humans are said to have hidden fertility, meaning that there are no outward obvious signs that they are fertile. But there have been studies showing that human males are somewhat sensitive to estrus cues in real-world situations. But it is very minor, and there are no obvious signs of being fertile, unlike most mammals, such as baboon, or how male dogs know that a female dog is in heat somewhere in the neighborhood. The final phase is the luteal phase. This is when the egg is inside the uterus, waiting for a possible sperm to come by. As this phase progresses, the chances of pregnancy decreases. This all can be simplified by using this chart, or something similar, which is divided up into days based upon a regular 28-day cycle. Some women have either longer or shorter cycles, but the lunar cycle is average. Now let's get back to the paper, but first, let's hear how these authors defined lap dancing, which is kind of humorous. You know, academics trying to explain in scholarly terms the actual acts of lap dancing.
Hey guys, so Dexter handed me some paperwork that he would like me to read and react to, so here we go. Dancers in these clubs perform topless but not bottomless. Laws require them to wear underwear, bikinis, or similar garments to cover the pubis. Dancers typically wear very little perfume, but they often have breast implants, dye their hair, trim their pubic hair, shave their legs and underarms, unless you're me, and adopt a stage name different from their real first name. Typically do regular aerobic and resistance exercise to maintain a fit, lean body shape. True. During work, each dancer performs 1 to 3 stage dances on an elevated central stage about every 90 minutes to advertise their presence, attractiveness, and availability for lap dances. These result in only modest tip earnings, usually from $1 to $5, from men seated closest to the stage, if you're fucking lucky, totaling only about 10% of our earnings. The rest of the dancer's time is spent walking around the club asking men if they want a lap dance. That's true. Dancers typically make about 2/3 of their income from the main club area and 1/3 from the VIP area. Lap dances require informal tips rather than having explicit prices to avoid police charges of illegal solicitation, but the economic norms of tipping are vigorously enforced by bouncers, unless you're at a shitty club. Dancers thus maximize their earnings by providing as many lap dances as possible per shift. In each lap dance, the male patron sits on a chair or couch fully clothed with his hands to his sides. He is typically not allowed to touch the dancer. Typically. The topless female dancer sits on the man's lap, either facing away from him to display her buttocks, back, and hair, or facing him, either leaning back to display her breasts and to make conversation and eye contact, or leaning forward to whisper in his ear. Lap dances typically entail intense rhythmic contact between the male... Lap dances typically entail intense rhythmic contact between the female pelvis and the clothed male penis. Unless you're me. I don't go near that shit. Well, I guess that's the end of my reaction, guys. All I can say is, keep on dancing.
So, here are the hard facts presented by the authors. The data was taken over a 2-month period from November of 2006 to January of 2007. It was conducted in a topless club where there have been between 5 and 30 dancers dancing at a time, which is actually a rather small club. The audience consisted mostly of Anglo or Hispanic men between 20 and 60 years old, and they say semi-skilled to professionals, but I don't know how they determined that. 18 dancers participated, 7 of which were on the pill. The average age of the dancer was 26.9 years, and the average years of experience was 6.4. The average shift work was about 5.2 hours, and they determined that shift length did not correspond with shift earnings, and it could be because the dancers were more goal-oriented, meaning that once they made their $200, $300, they were out of the club, versus doing an 8-hour shift just because to do. There was a total of 296 shifts documented, with approximately 5,300 lap dances performed, or it averages out to 18 lap dances per shift. So the rate of documentation was 27%, or an average of 16.4 entries per dancer over the 60 days. And the dancers were just paid $30 for their participation in this study. The participants were asked to use an anonymous subject ID number to log into a website every day that they danced for those 60 days, and each day they were report their mood, work hours, work location, and tip earnings in US dollars, and whether they had begun or ceased menstruation. Using this information, the authors divided the cycles into 3 phases. The days 1 to 5, early follicular and menstruation, days 9 through 15, highest infertility, and days 18 to through 28 as a luteal phase. They excluded days in which the dancer's fertility status was questionable, basically days 6, 7, 8, and 16 and 17. And this chart summarizes the researchers' findings. On the second graphic, you can see the range bar, which is the high and low amount of money that the dancers made, with the center dot actually being the average amount of money made. The takeaway is that when dancers are ovulating, they make more money, and if they are on birth control, they receive no benefits. Using the luteal phase as normal, during menstruation, they only made about 70% of what they did during their normal phase, while they still made 140% during their ovulatory phase, or while they were in estrus. As stated earlier, dancers on birth control received no benefit. In fact, during the course of the study, they only made 70% of non-pill users. This might be explained by the pill eliminated peak fertility effects on the female body and behavior by putting the body into a state of hormonal pseudo-pregnancy. After talking to some dancers about this study, I mean, what else am I going to do at a strip club except to talk about menstruation? Some of them say that, in fact, they make more money on the rag than when they are ovulating. This can be explained by illusory correlation. A good example of this is the belief among emergency room workers that more crazies come out during the full moon than at any other times. The thing is that people tend to notice the full moon more than any other phase, and they cause that correlation of the crazies with the full moon, although studies have actually shown that this is not the case. What happens is that they notice the full moon more than any other phase of the moon, and they correlate those two. It is similar to dancers. They tend to notice when they are dancing while on their period because precautions have to be made. There is no need to do so during the other phases of the cycle. So, remembering the individual instances of making a lot of money while on their period stands out more than the times when they made a lot of money during the other phases of their cycle. This leads to the assumption that they make a lot of money while on their period. The authors talk about the possibilities of why dancers make more money when they are fertile, including pheromones or some other cause, but they have no definitive answer as to why. But they do conclude with the following. We suspect that cyclic shifts in women's attractiveness are driving our tip earnings results, rather than the well-documented shifts in sexual receptivity, proceptivity, or selectivity for good genes. Here they are describing the woman's tendency to go after the alpha chads. Yes, that is a real thing, and it has been documented while they are most fertile. Although an estrous increase in sexual receptivity and proceptivity toward clients who exhibited good gene cues may bias dancers to approaching certain men, it is unclear how this bias would lead to greater tip earnings during estrus. Indeed, it seems that the optimal strategy for obtaining tips is to focus on men who are profligate, drunk, and gullible rather than those who are intelligent, handsome, and discerning. So they're assuming it's better that dancers go after those drunk guys than after the alpha chads to make money. There are several issues with the study, the primary one being the small sample size of 18. This means that the results cannot be generalized to the wider population. Also, remember that the study occurred between November and January, meaning that all those holidays fell within the study's time frame period. Now, if there's any large club owners out there that wish to engage us in doing something similar at their club as a process improvement, let us know. Another minor issue is that the data was self-reported, and errors could be made by the dancers as they put the information into the website. I hope you found this video entertaining or at least informative. All of the sources are linked down below, including the article. Or you could go to researcherstrip.com and there's a summary of this video posted on there, along with other stuff that you might want to check out. We also post concurrently to other video sites in case we get banned from a certain one. The links are down below and also our website at researcherstrip.com. And with that, goodbye.